Hi, everyone. Welcome to the November Saga Salon. I'm Lauren Jackson, also known as LJ, the Publicity and Marketing Manager at Saga Press. The Saga Salon is a monthly event series hosted by Saga, the speculative fiction imprint at Simon Schuster. Each month, a stellar panel of authors do a deep dive into a specific topic about almost anything, from bending time to building worlds. This month, we're getting festive and talking about one of my favorite things, which is holiday horror. Halloween's over, so what's next? While the holiday season and horror seem like an unlikely pairing, the genre doesn't shy away from melding them together in compelling, freakish, and terrifying ways. Tonight, we have acclaimed horror authors Stephen Graham Jones, Jeremy Robert Johnson, and Gwendolyn Kiste to discuss finding horror in the holidays and other unlikely places. Our moderator, Emily Hughes, is the editor of NIGHTFIRE.com, a horror site from Tor's new horror imprint, and a contributor to Tor.com, Electric Literature, Thrillist, and more. And so without further ado, I am passing it over to her. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, LJ. I'm going to introduce our panelists quickly. First off, we have Gwendolyn Kiste. Gwendolyn is the Bram Stoker Award-winning author of The Rust Maidens and Her Smile Will Untether the Universe, Pretty Marys All in a Row, The Invention of Ghosts. Her short fiction and nonfiction have appeared in Nightmare Magazine, Tor NIGHTFIRE, Unnerving, and Lamplight, among others. Originally from Ohio, she now resides on an abandoned horse farm outside of Pittsburgh with her husband, 2 cats, and not nearly enough ghosts. Next up, we have Jeremy Robert Johnson. Jeremy is the author of the brand new novel, The Loop, the critically acclaimed collection Entropy and Bloom, and the cult sensation Skullcrack City. And now Stephen Graham Jones is the Ivina Baldwin Professor of Distinction of English at the University of Colorado Boulder and the author of more than 25 books. He's also the recipient of an NEA Fellowship, the Texas Institute of Letters Award for Fiction, the Independent Publishers Award for Multicultural Fiction, the Western Literature Association's Distinguished Achievement Award, the Bram Stoker Award, and has been a finalist for the Shirley Jackson Award and the World Fantasy Award. The New York Times called his most recent novel, The Only Good Indians, gritty and gorgeous, and NPR said Jones is one of the best writers working today. He lives in Boulder, Colorado with his family. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to all of our guests at home. I hope everybody is healthy and safe where they are right now, and warmer than Jeremy is out in his garage. So it's speaking, as the weather is getting colder, we're thinking about the holidays. We're obviously thinking about, travel being quite fraught this year. But I want to take us back a couple of weeks to Halloween to start off. Now, somehow it hasn't even been a full 2 weeks since Halloween, which doesn't seem possible. The passage of time is definitely a little slipperier this year. I did see Christmas displays in my grocery store in mid-October, which I object to in the most strenuous of terms. I was working with a writer last month who wanted to do a list of horror fiction set around Halloween. And we had a really tricky time coming up with the exception of there's a decent amount of short fiction set around Halloween and a couple notable novel length exceptions like Ray Bradbury and Norman Partridge. But why do you all think horror writers shy away from writing about what is arguably the spookiest holiday? Stephen, let's start with you.
I wonder if it's because we don't like to put that ridiculous apostrophe between the 2 E's of Halloween. Like I see that sometimes, and I'm like, what is going on here? Are you really that fancy? No, that's the reason I would shy away from it. But I don't shy away from it. I've got a lot of short stories set on Halloween, and I can't. Let me look. Hold on.
We had Dirtmouth in the Ellen Datlow collection, right? Yeah.
Is that Halloween?
Yeah, that one's set on Halloween.
Really? I got more than I thought. But no, I think Halloween's great to set horror on myself. So I don't really have like an answer for why a writer wouldn't choose Halloween. It's so fun. Everybody's in masks. You can't tell who everybody is. You don't know which weapon is a prop weapon, which weapon is not. Yes, it's the happy time of the year for me. I want to set everything I do on Halloween, really.
That's a great answer, and that just means you need to write a Halloween novel for us.
Oh yeah, it's coming. Don't worry.
Perfect. Gwendolyn, what are your thoughts?
I think a lot about short fiction. And so, like you said, like I've read a lot of Ray Bradbury's short fiction, The October Country, which is an entire collection of short fiction set on Halloween. But I guess when I do think about it, there aren't nearly as many novel length works that are set on Halloween. Maybe because it's too on the nose. Maybe as horror writers, we're just like, oh, it's just too, like, it's too much. It's too much of a good thing. I can't do it. I don't know. But I love Halloween. I've definitely written some stories based on Halloween. So like, I'm totally open to it. I'm like, Steven, I'm like, yeah, bring it on. That's awesome. I love it.
Perfect. Jeremy, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's weird. There's books that probably don't have Halloween scenes, but I still associate them with Halloween. Like for whatever reason, coming of age stuff, like Summer of Night or Boy's Life, I imagine have Halloween scenes in them, even if they don't. I feel like there's a lot more, for me, there's a lot more trauma and subversion around like ostensibly happy times like Christmas or, Mother's or Father's Day. There's a lot of other holidays that are more fraught with like that tension, the family coming together at Thanksgiving. And Halloween is to me just kind of so universally fun and enjoyable that it's almost like I don't want to taint it with the horrific. It's like, I don't know. It's such a happy time to me. I don't see it as spooky. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I don't see it as scary. Like I just love it so much.
Right. Maybe it's that like Halloween, the chaos is directed outwards, whereas with Thanksgiving and Christmas and other sort of family-based holidays, it's all internal. It's all in the house around the dinner table.
Yeah. Also Halloween is depending on where you are in the country, you're often snowed in, so your Halloween story becomes a inside the house story, which is a different kind of story,
Right. Or a pandemic Halloween story where you're shooting, candy down a tube to trick-or-treaters on the street.
Yeah.
Did any of you do that this year?
No.
My dad did. Like, I did not get to go over and see it because they're in Ohio and I'm in Pennsylvania, but he sent pictures and there were pictures because he's that big into Halloween. I think he's here right now as one of the participants. So like, shout out to my dad. He built that tube back in August, I think. It was like months ago. He was like, if they hold it, I'm gonna have my Halloween tube. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. It's really being committed to it. So that's good. And safely. Socially distanced Halloween.
Perfect.
We got reverse trick-or-treated because we have all kinds of animatronics and all kinds of junk on our lawn and front porch, and kids would come leave candy on the welcome mat and run away. It was like a test if they could make it up past all the jumping stuff.
That's a wonderful tradition. That kind of leads at one of my later questions was going to be, do any of you have any more sort of unusual traditions around any holiday, not just Halloween? That's a wonderful one. Anyone else?
Ooh.
I used to do a kind of an event sometimes around Halloween. We called it a champagne jam, where we would get a group of friends together, if you remember that, like a bunch of friends in one space. And we would pick 3 films, ostensibly, like in this case, Halloween themed. And during the course of each film, you would need to drink a bottle of champagne. That's what made it the champagne jam. And then in between, we'd have, cupcakes and pizza and stuff like that. But the other catch of the event was it had to be the worst films ever. So it would be like Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, that one with the eunuch serial killer who makes evil toys, the Brian Yuzna Screaming Mad George one, or Elves, the one with the Dan Haggerty elves, or the one with Grizzly Ben or Grizzly Adams fighting against elves. And we could only find that one on VHS at the store Movie Madness. We couldn't even find it anywhere else. And so that was kind of a fun holiday themed thing we used to do to get together and enjoy like the worst Halloween movies of all time,
Perfect. I did find in my, anecdotal research, there are so many more sort of holiday, broad all holidays, horror movies than there are horror books. And obviously there are tons of, individual story collections that address this. There's Dark Nights, there's Hark the Herald Angels Scream, so many of these are Ellen Datlow collections, of course. What do you think it is about the change in medium that makes holiday horror more of a thing in visual media rather than the written word?
Maybe because Halloween, like Halloween and Christmas are such visual holidays, like the decorations are so part of it. And obviously, I mean, I feel like you can very clearly do that in fiction as well. But I think maybe because we're so used to seeing it that it just makes almost more sense that you just transfer from the visual medium, from, something visual to a visual medium. So, but, again, I think there should be more horror, like more horror fiction than around holidays, because it's great. Like we said, it's awesome.
Jeremy, did you have something to add?
Sometimes I see the comments pop up and it's just someone yelling more horror fiction in bold as a general principle. And to me, I was just like, go.
Strong agree.
Yeah, strong agree.
Perfect. Yeah, I think with holidays, there's, such strong iconography, related to Christmas or Thanksgiving or, even Valentine's Day. The icon of Valentine's Day is a heart with an arrow through it, which is sort of like objectively horror, right? So you have a lot to play with on that front. How do you see that sort of fitting into, horror fiction?
Yeah, Valentine's Day, I feel like is underexploited.
Yeah, I think it is.
Good point.
Yeah, because in film we have like both My Bloody Valentines and we have the movie Valentine, but I can't think of any Valentine horror stories or novels. And isn't y'all correct me if I'm wrong, I don't really know details or research or history, but isn't there a Valentine's Day massacre like somewhere back in hundreds of years ago or something? Do y'all know something about that? I don't know anything about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So why not use that? I mean, that'd be a fun thing to use, But I don't know why there aren't more Valentine's Day horror stories. I can't even think of any anthologies that do that either. No.
Mm-hmm.
And there definitely should be, because that like combines like the creepiness of love, and love is creepy. I always say that, like relationships are like so scary, and so like that just is naturally like horror right there.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a lot. I really can't.
I wonder if the reason is that if we start having Valentine's Day anthologies, then people will have Arbor Day anthologies and Tax Day anthologies. Maybe that'd be too much. I don't know.
For it. No, Arbor Day, man. Still, one of the most disturbing Tales from the Crypts I ever saw involved just a bunch of arbor work. It was all these loggers, and it was a story of infidelity. And at the end, they put the bad boss and the cheating wife inside of a giant old growth tree, and had the guy who had been blinded by them saw through it with his chainsaw. Mm-hmm. And so there's room for Arbor Day horror for sure. Let's not denigrate that.
There's also that scary evil tree in Evil Dead, right?
Yeah.
Oh, tons of them.
Yeah.
They're voracious.
Trees are scary too. Like forests are terrifying. They're and Tax Day, come on, we need more Tax Day horror. Yeah. Like there's nothing scarier than that. That's a horror genre.
Yeah.
The real horror was the tax fraud all along. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Arbor Day could be a really untapped resource, pun intended, I guess. But, nature is certainly, I mean, eco horror is an entire popular subgenre. It seems like a natural fit to sort of project that onto Arbor Day and Earth Day. Yeah. But not a lot of July 4th horror out there, though.
No, I guess I know what you did last summer is July 4th, if I remember correctly.
Jaws is July 4th horror.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that always comes to mind.
Yeah.
Love Jaws.
Yeah. But if
the first thing I think of when I think of Jaws, but it is definitely a part of it.
Yeah. But then if you do if you choose April Fool's Day as your horror setting, then you have to use the actual prank aspect of it, like you do in April Fool's Day,
Or you don't use it at all, and that's the prank of the concept. It's a prankless April Fool's Day story.
Yeah.
No tricks.
Yeah. And I guess for horror,
right? Because at what point does subverting that trope become less important than just leaning into it?
Yeah. And I guess Friday the 13th has kind of become a horror holiday, hasn't it? Every time it rolls around 2 or 3 times a year or whatever. Yeah.
Well,
tomorrow.
Yeah. Good luck, everybody.
I can't think of. Yeah, right. I can't think of anything scarier than a Friday the 13th in 2020. Well, all good. Everybody go get a tattoo about it. It's fine. LJ knows what's up.
I wonder if like years from now, if we'll be like writing horror stories about 2020, if it'll be its own kind of horror. Like 10 years from now, there'll be like a themed anthology writing about what happened to you in 2020. Yeah.
I feel like it'll take a while. I think it might be one of those things where, you know, it's sort of like tragedy plus time equals horror.
Exactly.
I'm bastardizing that quote, but you get the gist. I mean, I think we could.
I sold a.
Go ahead, Jeremy. You were saying something.
I sold a pandemic horror story already, so maybe I'm doing it too early. You know, I don't know.
No, I think you're good. Get ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Do you think there is, I mean, there was obviously a lot of discussion back in the spring when we were first in lockdown about, you know, people who were reading Station 11, who were watching Contagion. Is that something that some people were saying, oh, it's too on the nose, it's too much for me to do that right now, and other people seemed to need it as kind of an exposure therapy, and those to me seem to be like the horror people, right? And I wonder if do you think that's just a personality thing?
Maybe that's an interesting point, because I was thinking as you're saying that I know some people were like, no, I do not want to be anywhere near pandemic horror.
Yeah.
Even a few horror fans that I know said that, but then other people are like, that's exactly what I want right now. So I think maybe it is like more of a personality thing, or even at the moment, you know, maybe somebody at one point would be like, oh yeah, that's great, and now are like, no. So, you know, it is interesting, because I do also think horror fans in general are more willing to kind of look at things as they are than some other people who are into different genres. I feel like there's kind of this idea of like, we'll face it, this is what we do as horror fans and horror writers. We just look at things as they are and the terror of them. So I do think that it's not too soon for a pandemic horror story. I know lots of people who already had things planning to come out this year, and then it's like, oh no, and it's like, it's all right, it's all good.
Right. A few people in the comments have been calling out Paul Tremblay's Survivor Song, which I read in February, which was certainly a choice on my part, but you know, especially living in Massachusetts. But I think, you know, it did kind of help inure me a little bit to what was coming, even if, you know, it wasn't so much gore in the streets, but it's definitely it can be a coping mechanism, or it can be I need to get away from this at all costs.
Yeah,
thank you, Kristen. There is still time for gore in the streets.
The cool thing about Paul's book is that if we don't read it during the pandemic, but the previous year or the year after, then it's probably a zombie novel, you know. But we read it during the pandemic, and it's a pandemic novel.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of overlap between those two. Yeah.
Yes.
It's just the thing with Survivor Song is it's like merciless. There's mercy in that it happens quickly, and that, you know, I guess they don't have to spend so much time locked in their houses. Like everybody just kind of, it's the rabies attacks happen much faster. Yeah. And so that for me was kind of exciting. It was like, oh, they just get to get it over with. Like this is, you know, they're only a couple months out, and then it spreads through. And so I totally found reading Survivor Song like pretty cathartic. The open, especially, you know, it's like the Dawn of the Dead opening scene, and then all those Facebook messages from everybody confused, and then people saying like, how do we pack up? How do we get assets? All the uncertainty. That opening stretch before it turned into full zombie was almost spookier to me. It was a little eerier, just because it did mirror so well what we were experiencing, you know. And then it was almost a relief when they were like, all right, let's go on our, you know, zombie bashing, make it to the hospital road trip. I was like, okay, I can deal with this.
Yeah, you're right. If we have to watch incubation periods and all the let's form a community efforts, that's kind of boring. We just want the rush. We want the race.
Yeah. So do I take it you're both fast zombie fans rather than slow zombie fans?
Any zombie.
Yeah, any zombie. Yeah, that's yeah. No, I like it. I mean, it depends on like what zombie do you want to read about or watch, or what zombie do you want to be in a tight hallway with, you know? If I'm in a tight hallway, I want to be with a shuffler, with a Romero zombie. But reading about both of them read wonderfully. I think if you got a time span for your story of like 2 days, then rage zombies, fast zombies are the way to go. But if you've got 10 months, then go ahead and use the shufflers, you know?
I live outside of Pittsburgh, so I have to go with the Ramiro zombies. Like I'm like contractually obligated to go with the slow Ramiro zombies. That's what we all grew up on around here. So that's where my heart will always be.
Well, Gwendolyn, I mean, the Rust Maidens deals with a kind of a contagion, and Jeremy, obviously the Loop is very much about a contagion, even if it's a biologically engineered one. So you both must have some thoughts about sort of the story arc of 2020.
I don't know. I don't know if I have an idea of the story arc of it yet. Like that feels like that'll only come once it's over and we can look back on it.
Yeah, this story arc just needs to absolutely not go like the Loop. So
Yeah.
That's what I can say about that without spoilers. But yeah, I mean, I always find stories of contagion and you know, biotech infections and stuff like that fascinating. I mean, I always have. Like, you know, Andromeda Strain was a touch point for me as a little kid. So always found that stuff terrifying and fascinating at the same time.
Yeah. I'm a little bit
on the zombie front, I'm sorry, I just want to put in one quick vote for the Return of the Living Dead halfway fast but brain eating zombies, because to me when I was a kid, the fact that they only wanted your brains was so intimate.
Yeah.
It was like so personal. And even though part 2 basically sucks, like it's kind of funny and it mostly sucks, there's a scene where the son is infected and he bites his mom, like his mom gives him a hug and then he goes for the brain bite. And that to me was just like that was the purest nightmare fuel out of like this super goofy series. And also the fact that those zombies were kind of funny made them scarier. Like send more paramedics. Yeah. I was terrified of those guys. The Romero ones were like slow quicksand, and these guys were like a little bit funny, and they also wanted to eat like your personality. You know,
also in Return of the Living Dead, the reason it was fun and scary at the same time was those punks who were riding around in their crappy car with the jam box on the trunk and all that. That was me and my friends, and so I was like, we're in the victim pool, you know.
It's been years since I've seen Return of the Living Dead, the first one. I think I've seen the third one more recently, which is much more somber. That's a much more somber movie.
That's the piercing girl, right? All the piercing.
Yeah, it was one of my first big crushes. First big horror crush.
That poster's great. Like I always when I think of the movie, I always think of her on the poster. I remember it when I was really little in the video store, and I'm like, what is this movie? And then I think I saw the first one first. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like it's going to be like that third one at all. And it's not. The third one's like really sad. I mean, it's like the ending's awful. Talk about love and being sad. See, that's like a total sad one at the end. Spoiler. It's like 25, 30 years old. So.
Yeah. But also being like a really rad zombie goth, you know?
Yeah.
Like she gets really into piercings once she's undead because it doesn't even hurt, you know?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Jeremy, what you were saying about the mother-son zombie bite sort of brings us back to this question of family, and the familial relationships around, especially the winter holidays, where you get, you know, it can be really fraught, or it can be really comforting, or it can be both, depending on the moment. And that's obviously a huge well of inspiration for creators, for writers, for filmmakers, for anyone, you know, who creates fiction in any form. What do you think it is about that sort of pressure cooker of the holidays that makes it such an attractive, you know, sort of canvas?
It's so emotionally intense.
Gwendolyn,
already,
do you have thoughts?
And I think another piece of that is like, if you have trauma around the holidays, that forever marks that holiday for the rest of your life too, which I think is kind of one of the, like, I mean, it's like the Gremlins, you know, Santa Claus in the chimney story. For her, that became Christmas, which again, the scariest scene in that movie was for me, that scene. It's always the familial stuff. But yeah, I think it's because of the emotional intensity of the holidays and it being in a heightened state, and that there's this projected sense that there should be joy and there should be celebration, and yet we're all still just as human, and we're forced into these situations where we're closer together. You know, I think makes stuff said around Christmas or Thanksgiving really resonant and intense, you know. And also I think Christmas lights are eerie. You know, they just are. There's the glow of them is weird. It's creepy.
Yeah.
So
Well, you know, with Christmas and with, I guess, with Easter too, like it's kind of like the reason clowns are scary is that their wrapper doesn't match the inside, you know, and it can be that way with Santa Claus. It can be that way with the Easter Bunny, you know, and if the Easter Bunny's got a chainsaw and it's coming after you, you're gonna be like twice as scared than if it's Leatherface, because you kind of expect it out of Leatherface, you know, but you don't expect it out of a big giant bunny, you know.
Maybe you do.
Jeremy.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I like what you said about almost like the expectation of joy. I like that a lot because I think that that's true. There's this added pressure, like on any other day of the year, even if you're with your family and it's fraught, it's like, oh, it's just the thing. But it's like everybody's supposed to behave around the holidays, but not everybody always does. And so that definitely creates that kind of friction. Also, the holidays are stressful. Like there's the expectation of buying gifts and making sure you get the right gifts. And there's a lot of travel. Like as we're sitting here talking, I'm thinking about the movie Black Christmas, which I just love. I just love that movie. And what's interesting about that is because everybody is leaving, they don't even necessarily know that people have gone missing yet, because it's like they're leaving the sorority house. And it's like, and I'm talking about the original. I have not seen the remake. I know there was a remake like last year. I have not seen that. So I'm speaking of. Oh, that's right. There are two. That's right. There was that other one. I have seen the first one from like 15 years ago, but I'm talking about the original because that's the one that I've seen and like the most. But like the girls are leaving the sorority, some of them, and then some of them are going missing because they're being murdered. And like nobody knows which one's which. So it's also almost like a confusing time of like, when are people leaving? You know, where are you going? When are you coming back? And so it's like that constant movement. Plus travel, it can be stressful unto itself anyways, more so now this year than probably ever before. But I think that even that, like beyond all the family stuff, is incredibly stressful. It's like basically we've created a time of year where it's just going to be really, really hard and we all have to look like we're being happy all the time. So I mean, I think that's horror unto itself, all that existential dread. Yeah. Happy holidays, everyone.
And you know, when like at these holidays where we expect joy, you sit down with your family, your extended family in a living room, and everybody's drinking a drink. But then like 6 drinks later, the masks come off, and it's a wholly different party, you know. And it's terrible. You don't want those. You want the mask to stay on. You know, you don't want the alcohol to rub that mask off.
Speaking of wrappers not matching the insides, yeah. Fair point, Kelly. Wear your masks.
I just also wanted to, Black Christmas, the original Bob Clark one, is my #1 favorite holiday horror movie of all time. Just the phone calls. Oh my God, the phone calls are so unsettling. And just, anyway, but the fact that Bob Clark also did A Christmas Story is just one of the, like, he nailed Christmas twice. Like he was like, oh, now I'm going to give you this throwback, you know, comedy, and here's the scariest version of Christmas. I just feel like that guy, his whole career should have just been variations on Christmas movies, you know? Like, because he was amazing at it.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I think my favorite holiday horror, if he had ever made it, would be Eli Roth's that Thanksgiving horror that was in the trailer at the front of the Grindhouse stuff. Y'all remember that? I wanted it to be a real movie so bad, but I mean, I think my favorite's just really wimpy. I think it's Halloween, you know?
Yeah.
That's a great one. That's great.
Nothing wrong with a classic. You know, I was doing some reading before this, and very handily, someone on Gizmodo had done the math, had done a roundup of which holidays had the most and the fewest horror movies attached. Valentine's Day is actually at #4 with 8 movies.
What?
Easter is #3 with 9 movies.
Really?
Which I did not expect. Yeah, let's see, we've got Critters 2, the main course, Resurrection, Easter Bunny Kill Kill, Easter Bunny Bloodbath, Easter Casket, Easter Sunday, and it goes on and on and on. Halloween, of course, has 23 movies, and Christmas leads the pack with 46.
Wow. I would not have guessed that there was more Halloween than Christmas. That's great. That's exciting.
Yeah.
It's Critters 2, and the kill is an Easter bunny covered in Kreitz falling through a stained glass window into a church. It's a pretty great moment in the film, but I wouldn't call that an Easter. It's an Easter bunny dying, and then I think later during an egg hunt, there's a giant ball of the critters. But that's iffy. It's Easter adjacent.
Yeah.
And somebody had a question in the in the audience about the travel themed horror anthology. It's called Worst Laid Plans. That's the one that just dropped. That Sadie Hartman did the intro for. So that's anyway. Just
No,
side note.
I love like road horror movies like Joyride or Forsaken. You know, I love that kind of, or Hitcher, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an anthology that I just got my hands on called, I want to say it's called Dark Highways. That's all sort of like road trip, back roads, you know, out on the highway horror, which is, you know, it's not holidays, but it's certainly on the way too, especially, you know, if nobody wants to fly this year. That's a rich vein.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's a country Jeepers Creepers opens in for the first 45 minutes. You know, a couple of kids going home for weekend or whatever. Yeah.
Transforms. Another thing I was thinking about for holiday horror is like Midsummer and Wicker Man are kind of holiday horror. They're just like, it's about people showing up at the wrong holidays at the wrong time. Like, but you know, for everybody else, it's a total celebration. It's like a great holiday, unless you're that person that happens to be the visiting sacrifice, and then you're like, it wasn't great for them. You know, those count. They're you know, I don't know if Midsummer is a real thing.
Yeah.
I know people burn effigies all the time.
Like Walpurgis Night and things like that. Yeah, no, it's very much that intersection of folk horror and holiday horror is all those sort of like weird throwback, you know, harvest festivals and fertility rites and things like that, which are for some reason they seem to be more prevalent in the UK than in America. But I wish we would do more of that. You know, I hope that Midsummer kind of brings that back.
Every Beltane I always watch. So on May 1st, I always watch The Wicker Man, because it's like, to me, that's such a Beltane movie. And I mean, Midsummer, I'm not sure when, because I think when it's supposed to take place is not really exactly when Midsummer would be. So I'm not really clear on like the timeline of it. I think in the movie, I was like, I don't think that's when it would be, like, but okay. But yeah, those are definitely, I think that, like you said, the intersection of folk horror and like the Sabbaths of like Wicca and things like that, you can go through each of those, so like, you know, Yule and Beltane and Ostara and everything. And those are definitely, you can put a lot of like witchy creepiness on that. I'm all for that. I love witchcraft and horror. So that definitely is a good overlap.
You know, talking about other holiday traditions, I guess for Piranha, the day that all the people stick their legs in the water is a big holiday. That's the day the fish in the sky, you know?
It's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
July 4th is a big holiday for the shark in Jaws. You know, it's a buffet. Well, what do you think, just solely based on lore and traditions of all the sort of major holidays of the year, entirely divorced from whether or not they've been the subject of horror movies or horror books, what do you think is just objectively the scariest holiday that's not Halloween?
I mean, July 4th is weird. It's weird that everybody's waving flags. Flags terrify me. I mean, and the people who wave flags terrify me. You know, so yeah, July 4th is pretty terrifying to me. Yeah.
That's fair. That's very fair.
I still think it's Christmas for me, though. Now you bring up a good point about July 4th, so there is that. So, but I think for me, it probably is still Christmas or New Year's, because New Year's is kind of intense. There's like huge groups of people. They're drunk. They're like really like freaking out. They're trying to like be like, I got to get out whatever is bad from this year so I can start fresh next year, and that's like kind of scary. Like, I don't know, like there's not a lot of New Year's horror, but when you think about it that way, like, you know, it's like, got to get rid of the old year, get really drunk in big crowds. That's, you know.
Well, yeah, New Year's is like the purge for your, you know, the stuff about yourself you don't like.
Exactly. So again, that existential dread. So from Happy Holidays, so now Happy New Year's, everyone. I just think of the existential dread with everything.
I don't even remember. I don't remember New Year's Evil well enough to even say what it's about. Do you remember it, Jeremy? Do y'all remember that?
No.
It's been too long, man.
At some point, they grabbed every single holiday and put a slasher in it. I mean, you know, they had a run.
Yeah.
Except for Arbor Day.
Again, it's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
They should
Um,
they should rebrand that movie Splinter as Arbor Day because it would work.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
no.
Oh no, what was that
Oh.
movie? The Happening with the
Oh,
trees.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. That's Arbor Day horror.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess The Purge kind of qualifies as holiday horror, even though it's a fictional holiday.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
If we're counting that, I'm counting the shunting from society, because when those guys throw a party, it's a problem. You don't want to go. That's another one you don't want to accidentally show up at.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, that is delightful.
Do you remember P2, that movie in the parking garage? That movie is set over Thanksgiving weekend, if I remember correctly. That's why this woman's able to get trapped in the parking garage because nobody's
Wait,
there.
what about Blackcoat's daughter? Aren't they going home for holiday in that one?
Yeah, they are. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, there we
Yeah.
go. So any of the home for holiday boarding school
Yeah.
films count. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, in terms of, I think I made it through all of my, it's fine. In terms of going back to this idea of pandemic horror stories, down the line, I wonder if there's something along, I wonder if we can do something with, masks and masks on Halloween versus, masks in a pandemic. Just a thought.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like Stephen's going to be the person to talk to about this because Stephen is frequently showing off his collection of masks on social media.
Yeah, for sure. The other day I was walking down the street and I saw a mask. It was kind of like doing that slow roll where it like flops over in the wind. And I walked up to it and I kind of towed it, kicked it over for no reason. And it was like full of blood on the backside. And that to me was a little horror story right there. I don't know what was going on with that.
My God.
You just walk away from that. You just back away.
Yeah.
Truly. You just keep going.
Yeah.
That's somebody else's problem.
It is
You don't
weird, the
linger
abandoned
there. Yeah.
masks. You do see those. I've never seen one covered in blood. Of course you have, Stephen. That just is so appropriate. But like, I have been outside of like a grocery store and it's like somebody just takes off and just throws it on the ground, which is so
Yep.
weird. I'm like a lot of times you can't even reuse those. Like, why are you doing this? Like, this is wasteful. We could be doing this masking thing for another year. But it's just very strange. And there is something very lonesome and creepy about the masks just lying on the ground. And you'll go someplace where somebody will take a picture and they'll just be, it's just like very eerie in this quiet kind of way of being like, what's the story there? Like, ugh. I always just think at least the person was probably wearing a mask, which is probably still better than not. But I wish, you could have just thrown it in the trash and you didn't want it anymore. A blood-covered mask. And it wasn't just sitting upright with the blood. Of course, you had to turn it over and then the blood revealed itself. That's terrifying. Oh.
It's very cinematic. I mean, you can see it, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Mardi Gras beads or the Santa hats left over after the parade or what have you. Or I guess that's a New York thing. SantaCon, which a couple of people were mentioning in the comments, is its own particular horrible horror holiday where a bunch of drunk frat guys and finance bros dress up like Santas and get absolutely smashed in the streets of New York.
So SantaCon, yeah, we have it in Portland too. And Chuck Palahniuk kind of popularized it, talking about it in one of his nonfiction books and talking about it on stage and stuff. And I think it originally came up from the Cacophony Society out of Southern California and was pretty anarchic and unexpected. And they didn't really explain it to people at first, and it just kept happening. And now it's become this ritualized yearly thing. But a couple of years back, some friends of mine and we bought banana suits. And we wore them out on SantaCon night and declared it BananaCon and tried to go to a kind of socialized war with the Santas that were out for SantaCon. And it actually almost came to blows around 4 a.m. because we were yelling, bananas rule, Santas rule. And it was too late to be yelling that kind of thing at these guys that had been bar hopping all day. And so I would say we need to bring more bananas to SantaCon. BananaCon is where it's at. It's time for a revolution. Because SantaCon's kind of played out. It's time to take them on. Basically,
Oh, nice.
I agree with those vibes.
I think that's a strong platform. I think you're going to get yourself elected mayor on that platform.
In Portland, maybe. It's a weird system here.
Yeah.
That's scary. I have never heard of SantaCon. This
Neither
is
have I.
the first time I've ever. This is terrifying. Like groups of frat guys like are terrifying unto themselves, but groups of drunken Santa-clad frat guys, like I want to cry right now. This is so scary, and I'm seeing people like in the comments being like, "It's so awful being stuck on the train with them," and oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. The world is awful. The world is
Here in Boulder, we have like naked bike rides and stuff, but those aren't really scary. You know, they're not like a bunch of Santas coming for you. You know, although I have noticed that people who do the naked bike ride, they always get shopping bags and put them on the seats of their bikes before they sit on them. And that's I don't know if I understand that prophylactic effort. I'm not sure. You know.
I very much. It's scary from a perspective of what happens if you make contact with the ground, I suppose.
Yeah. That sounds really
not
scary.
great. Yeah, there used to be a no pants subway ride in New York too.
Huh.
You'd get on the train and a bunch of pantsless people. I'm like, okay, you're gonna sit on those seats. You're braver than I am.
Kelly is here. Kelly Lonesome. She taught me something that is one of the most important things I ever learned. We were in New York, and she was telling me about subways because I don't know stuff about subways. I grew up in West Texas pastures, and she said if you're ever watching the train come in, and there's one empty subway car, that car is not for you. You do not get on that car because something terrible has been done in that car.
Just because it's sitting there empty.
Yeah, if it's empty, you do not get on that car. No, that car belongs to the subway gremlins now.
Oh my gosh.
Kelly is absolutely right.
Wow. These are things I would never know. Like I don't spend enough time in really big cities.
Yeah.
Like I obviously have been to big cities, but I get like Pittsburgh and Cleveland are the big cities I've spent the most time in. And wow. I'm learning all kinds of things.
You only make once. So Shane says, has anyone discovered any great new horror this October? Gwendolyn, anything for you?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I'm somebody who will occasionally rewatch or watch something for the first time I've never seen. I just saw Misery for the first time last night, so it's sometimes I go back to things that I just have never, for whatever reason, never caught before. So I'm trying to think if there's anything that was somewhat new that I had seen, but I don't think so.
What about? I think I liked Scare Package a lot on Shudder. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Yeah.
That's one of those rare cases where the wraparound was almost the best thing. Usually in the anthology thing, the wraparound's the weakest part, but in Scare Package, the Rad Chad's Video Emporium.
Yeah.
And the way it segued into actually being the final segment was kind of great. The Once Upon a Time in the Woods segment in that too was that Chris McElroy did. I was dying. I just dying laughing when the slime monster asks if she can push some of his goo back onto his side in case he ever reconstitutes. I lost it. It's I think you have some of my goo, and I was done.
I'll be watching that movie for years and years. It's so much fun. Yeah.
Shudder's been killing it. Yeah, there's great stuff.
Yeah.
And let's see. Next
Beach House is the one I keep coming back to with that because the beach is one of those. It's weirdly you can kind of get away to the Oregon coast right now. It's a way to get a reprieve from being locked in your own house. You can go lock yourself in someone else's rental house and at least see the ocean. And so watching something like that where they have this nice beach getaway and then all the fog comes in and then it goes full Fulci cosmic horror and has a parasite extraction sequence, which is right up my alley. Really had fun with Beach House, and that's another one of those where you can tell they didn't have the biggest budget, and then it pushed them to do some kind of innovative things with the atmospherics and having the infected people move in a really slow and eerie way. So that's the one where it's one of those films that actually resonated with me more after I had seen it. At the time I was like, hey, this is solid and I dig this. And then a couple weeks later, I was like, I think I kind of love that. It's weird how sometimes a film will grow on you like that.
I think in October I watched also it wasn't new anymore, but I finally watched Creep 2, and it was just as good as Creep 1. I'm so impressed with Creep 2, man. Really just disconcerting and also happy at the same time,
The hot tub scene in Creep 2 was fantastic.
Have any of you seen One Cut of the Dead?
Yeah, love it.
That was my like major discovery in October. It's like a non-horror horror movie.
Yeah, it's like a
But
love
it's just-
letter. It's like a love letter to the horror movie. It's really good. Yeah.
And I will recommend to anyone who's watching, just learn nothing about it, read nothing about it, just watch it. Perfect. All right, so let's see what we got in
I have a
question.
question. It's almost gone. What would you want middle schoolers to know about writing?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
There's lots of rejection, but don't let it like deter you. Just keep going. I feel like that's like the big thing. Like there's going to be rejection, but like you'll survive it. It'll be okay. It won't be like fun. Like I never want to be like, oh, it'll be nothing. It'll be awful, but like you can totally survive it and it'll be worth it in the end. I feel like that's a
That's just a perfect description of middle school anyway. I mean,
exactly. Maybe that's it too. Middle school is worse than the rejection of writing. So what you're already living through is so much worse than the worst you're going to get in writing. So you're going to be fine.
I think I would tell middle schoolers that if your parents don't like what you're writing and if the teachers don't like what you're writing, then you're writing what you should be writing, you know?
Someone needs to get that in writing from you, because someone's going to get called into the principal's office.
yeah, they do that now. Man, if I could go back and give advice to anybody writing at that stage, it's also just write about versions of what you're experiencing. Like it's such a tumultuous time. It's such a change-filled time in your life, and also the emotions are so strong. You know, I always wonder now as an adult if I feel and think as deeply and strongly as I did when I was, say, in junior high. Things were so intense and so transformative. So I think it's a fantastic time to write, even if you're not writing for publication, just to write, to get those things down on paper. And it will also be amazing to go back and look at. So
yeah, you're right. Back then, you feel things in an intense way that you might not ever again. Like back then, I'd hear a song for the first time, and it would go right to the center of me. I think that is only for me. Nobody else gets this, you know. And nowadays, I hear a song and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. I like it, but I don't think I feel this intensely as I used to, you know.
Or when you do get those moments, they're that much more pronounced because it's so much less frequent.
Yeah, maybe.
What age did you all start writing?
19.
I was like, from the time I could really write, 5, 6, 7 years old, I was always writing stories. My dad was always sending stories out for submission at the time. So like I actually saw him at the typewriter, and then he'd send out the packets of things. So then I would get at the typewriter and type up like things that were like terrible, probably not even full words sometimes when I was really little, but yeah. And then I would make like little books that I would like staple together, and I would have like a book sale for my parents, like a Scholastic book sale, because I was obsessed with Scholastic book sales. I'd make my parents buy my books, and then like I'd go and steal the books and resell the books to them. I don't do that now. That was only when I did that. I would never do that to readers now. I was like 6 or 7, but that was that. Yeah, I've always loved writing. Always loved horror. So yeah.
Perfect.
It was 7 for me, and it was that's when I started writing basically Stephen King pastiches. I would staple bind like 32 pages of paper and be like, here we go. And then each one would be about the one paragraph. And I think all of the first 3 of them were titled Dead Wrong. And I like drew blood drops coming off of the words in the title. And I like an axe in the border. And then I'd start a story and I'd be like, ooh, that's really creepy. That's really good. And then I'd be like, I have no idea what to write next. So a lot of like Cycle of the Werewolf ripoffs with transformations and stuff. And then at 18, I self-bound a batch of short stories and illustrations into a book called Chewy Leftover that had an eyeball on the front. And there's like 32 copies out there in existence. I gave one away at Powell's years back, but told them they didn't have any copyright or licensing and to never share it with anyone. And then, 19 was when I started in earnest, like sending stuff out. I had this is, 90s. So I had the writer's guide to the markets about this thick with 400 Post-it notes in it on every single thing that said, we take horror or experimental, basically. And then, just mailing out hundreds of that. I think I actually counted once. I had 232 rejections before I sold my first short story. for print stories. So it actually took me from 19 to 20, just grinding that out before I saw something in print. And thank God, because a lot of that early stuff should absolutely never have made it into print. Like those editors were so right, and they saved me from so much grief.
I feel like I'm still doing Stephen King pastiches though.
It's in there deep. It's in there so deep.
All right. Well, I think that we have to wrap up, but this has been absolutely delightful. I think LJ had a couple of things to say, but thank you all so much for joining us. I had a blast. I hope you did too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks to everyone for coming out in the audience. Thanks to our panelists. Thanks to our fantastic moderator, Emily Hughes. Just a reminder that you can pick up The Loop by Jeremy Robert Johnson and The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones on sagapress.com, and Gwendolyn Kiste, The Rust Maidens, on her website, gwendolynKiste.com. Yeah, so we'll be doing this in another month. I'm not sure what the theme is going to be yet, but it'll sure be exciting, and I hope to see you all there.